This lesson talks about the process of digestion and the digestive system. The purpose of digestion is to take in food and break it down into usable nutrients and to convert food into simpler molecules that can be absorbed and used by the cells of the body. We talk about different types of nutrients. We have water, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, which are actually organic molecules that regulate body processes, and vitamin K is actually a vitamin that's obtained from bacteria in the body. And we have minerals, which are an inorganic molecule, such as calcium, magnesium, and iron. And calcium we could use for bone strength, and we have iron, we find that in the hemoglobin of blood. And the vitamins and minerals are actually found in very small amounts compared to the other nutrients. So let's talk about the stages of digestion. The first one is ingestion, which is actually taking of food into the body. So that starts at the mouth, where we take food in, and then it leads into the pharynx, which is the opening or back of the throat, to the esophagus, which is that long tube from the pharynx down to the stomach, which is this pouch-like structure here, the small intestine, then it goes to the large intestine, and then finally out of the body. And then we have digestion, which is actually the breaking down of food. It starts in the mouth, and we have digestion occurring in the stomach and mostly in the small intestine. So if you want to picture something so that you can remember this, the mouth starts digestion, and if we take this polysaccharide here, very complex, very big, it starts to break it down with the use of enzymes. It's going to break it down into smaller pieces, and then eventually it'll be smaller pieces still. So the polysaccharide gets broken down into disaccharides, which will get broken down into monosaccharides, and those are small enough for the cells to take in. And then we have absorption, which is actually the uptake of nutrients by cells. And in the small intestine, we would get a lot of nutrient uptake, and in the large intestine, we're actually going to have water uptake or absorption. Egestion is the final stage of digestion, and it's the elimination of solid waste from the body. So anything that is not absorbed into the body is going to be eliminated. Now we have different types of digestion. The first one we'll talk about is mechanical. And mechanical digestion is the physical breakdown of food. So the size of the food particles actually becomes smaller. You think about a sandwich, it's big. You take a bite of it, and your teeth are going to grind it and crush it and make it smaller. In the stomach, we have some mechanical digestion because it's actually going to churn. Those muscles are going to move it around, and the food's going to break down in size a little bit more. Chemical digestion is actually going to be a change in the composition, the actual chemical makeup of the food with the use of enzymes. That is going to occur in the mouth, the stomach, and the small intestine. We also have what we call accessory organs in digestion. Food does not pass through these organs, but they are very important in the production of enzymes that are going to be used in digestion. So we have the gallbladder, which is actually part of the liver, and then the pancreas, which is the other accessory organ we're going to talk about. So the mouth functions in ingestion, taking food in, and we have mechanical digestion where the teeth tear and crush the food. And the tongue is actually going to push the food to the back of the throat, and it forms what's called a bolus, which is a ball of food. And we also have chemical digestion taking place because the saliva is going to be secreted from salivary glands, but the saliva is going to moisten the food so it makes it easier to chew and swallow. And in that saliva, there's actually an enzyme called salivary amylase, which starts the digestion of starch. The pharynx is the opening to the throat, and it's the location of the epiglottis. So this little punching bag looking structure in the back of your throat. And its function is actually to cover the trachea while you're swallowing so that you don't choke. So as we swallow, the epiglottis covers the trachea. As we're breathing, the epiglottis will cover the esophagus. So if we look at the esophagus, it's actually the food tube from the mouth to the stomach, and you can see that it's pretty long. And in the esophagus, we have these wave-like contractions taking place of the smooth muscle that push the food down. So think about it like squeezing a tube of toothpaste, and these muscles are going to contract in these wave-like contractions to push the food all the way through the esophagus, which is made up of smooth muscle. And then it ends at the top of the stomach where there's actually a muscular ring, which is called a sphincter, which closes. Then we have the stomach, which is a large muscular sac, and inside there are folds called rugae, which increase the surface area. If we look a little closer, you can see the lining of the stomach. This is kind of what it looks like, and you have these folds in here, so you have more surface area. And then you have mechanical digestion from the stomach churning and mixing the contents, and what it does is produces a substance called chyme. And chemical digestion, we have the secretion of hydrochloric acid actually happening in the stomach. And what this does is actually creates an acidic environment, and pepsin, the enzyme that starts to break down proteins, really likes the acidity. So that hydrochloric acid is there so that it provides that ideal environment for the pepsin. But what happens is because it's acidic, it's actually going to denature the amylase from the mouth. Okay, remember when an enzyme becomes denatured, it loses its shape and it can no longer function. And then the stomach also secretes some mucus, which is going to help protect the lining from the acidity. The small intestine is where the majority of the digestion is going to occur. Chyme is going to enter through the pyloric valve into the duodenum. The pyloric valve is at the end of the stomach, and the duodenum is actually the beginning of the small intestine. And the chyme is going to mix with secretions now from the pancreas and the liver, our accessory organs. We get lots of different enzymes from them. We'll take a look at in a minute. This is where most of the chemical digestion takes place, and food is going to move through the small intestine. As you can see, it's very long through peristalsis, and we're going to get the absorption of nutrients through a structure called villi, and the nutrients are going to be absorbed into the bloodstream. So if we look at all these enzymes now that are in the small intestine or throughout the digestive system, the mouth, we start with salivary amylase, which starts to digest starch. In the stomach, we have pepsin, which starts to digest proteins. And then the pancreas actually digests amylase for the breakdown of starch, trypsin, which is breakdown of protein. This is the continued breakdown, remember, it's already started. Lipase, which is going to break down fats, nuclease, which breaks down nucleic acids, and it's also going to secrete sodium bicarbonate. It's not an enzyme, but it's going to neutralize the chyme in the small intestine so that the other enzymes can work. And then the small intestine, actually, we get secretions of maltase, sucrase, and lactase, which are going to break the disaccharides that were already, the starch digestion already started. It's going to break them into the monosaccharides to be taken up into the bloodstream. And peptidase, which is going to bring dipeptides into amino acids, so continued breakdown of proteins. And here's the villi that we were talking about, these little finger-like projections. And if we zoom in, so to speak, you can see that in each of these villi you have blood vessels, and they go up around what's called a lacteal, and this is where the nutrients are actually going to be absorbed because now they're broken down into a simple form so that they can move by diffusion into the bloodstream. Then food moves into the large intestine. In the large intestine, the water is going to be absorbed from any of the undigested material. And remember, we also call the large intestine the colon. And the large intestine also houses the bacteria, which are going to produce vitamin K as a byproduct, which our body uses. Then waste is going to accumulate. So it goes through the entire colon, and then waste accumulates at the base of the colon, which is actually called the rectum, and exits the body through egestion through the anus. Now, at the end of the colon, we actually have what's called the appendix, which is no longer used, but at one time it was believed to be part of our digestion, but through evolution, we no longer need it. And we have the pancreas, which is an accessory organ. It produces hormones such as insulin to regulate sugar levels, enzymes to break down nutrients, and of course that sodium bicarbonate to neutralize the stomach acid in the small intestine so the enzymes can work so that they don't become denatured in too acidic of an environment. And the liver produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder, which is the little sac that you see underneath the liver. And bile's function is actually going to be to emulsify fat, which actually it doesn't break down fat. It just makes them into smaller droplets so that the enzymes have somewhere to go to work on the fat. And then there's a few disorders of the digestive system. The first is an ulcer, sometimes called a peptic ulcer, and it's actually caused from a bacterium called Heliobacter pylori or just H. pylori, and that's cured with antibiotics. And ulcers typically are kind of crater-like sores that are in the stomach. Sometimes they go into the um, esophagus as well. And when you eat very acidic foods or there's an increase of acid production in the stomach, it's going to irritate it. So they need to be cured so they can heal. And then diarrhea is when not enough water is absorbed by the colon. And constipation is the opposite. Too much water is absorbed by the colon, so the feces become very hard to pass. And to treat it, you just need to increase the fiber intake and water intake.